Welcome into the Inside Indiana Show. I'm Editor-in-Chief Ken Bikoff along with publisher Ed Magoni. And Ed, it's Bucket Week. The Hoosiers are going to be taking on the Purdue Boilermakers at Memorial Stadium. Now, Indiana is not enjoyed a happy season. They're 1-10 going into this thing. Purdue, on the other hand, has something to play for. They need a win to become bowl eligible. There's a lot of things going into this game. Indiana's fifth-year seniors have a chance to become the first class in 15 years to win the bucket 3 times in 5 years. They won last year at West Lafayette. What chance do the Hoosiers have against the Boilermakers, and what's going to be the key to them pulling off an upset?
Well, I think if you look at it on paper, I think Indiana has a very good chance of winning this game. I mean, statistically speaking, and mentally it's a different situation entirely because Purdue has had some success in the Big Ten. Indiana has had no success in the Big Ten. And it's just a matter of you believing that they can win, because I honestly believe that they can. If they come out with the right mindset and play a good, solid game, then I think they can win.
Well, it's going to be, to me, the key for this one is going to be about the defense. And Indiana hasn't done a very good job of stopping much of anything lately. As we roll some highlights from last week's 55-3 loss to Michigan State. I mean, Ed, it was a game that Indiana really didn't put up much of a fight, didn't put up much resistance, and they were basically done from the opening kickoff.
Yeah, they got down early, and then Michigan State just turned its pass rush loose on, and Indiana couldn't run the football, compounding that problem. So that basically they just turned the pass rush loose on Trey Roberson and beat the poor freshman quarterback up pretty badly, and eventually they pulled him out of the game and put in Edward Wright Baker, which actually probably saved Trey a lot of unnecessary punishment and possibly injury, but. Indiana can't afford to fall behind early in games. They need to jump on teams early and then try to play with a lead, which, relaxes Trey Roberson in his first year as a starter and everything. But, if they fall behind Purdue, I see a similar situation playing out.
Roberson didn't have a very good game against Michigan State at all. But then again, it seems like, he's a true freshman. He was due for one of those games, and in all fairness, Michigan State does have one of the best defenses out there.
Yeah, and their front four is very, very good. They were able to get a good push up the middle with Worthy and, with Will Golston coming off the edge. I mean, they can really pressure quarterback. They can disrupt the front. They completely stifled Indiana's running attack, which had been so successful coming into that game in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And, that puts a lot more pressure on Trey Roberson to throw the football, and then you have to take into account that his receivers are banged up. They're missing Kofi Hughes and Dre Muhammad, who just had come back from injury. The only 2, regular guys in there. The rest of them are all young kids and guys who haven't played that much.
Nick Stoner playing his first game.
Nick Stoner had to be moved over from cornerback to help out there. But, certainly, it was just kind of like a confluence of misfortune and events, I guess.
Yeah.
It all piled up into one big 55-3 whooping.
Not the least of which, the pile of events, is this long losing streak the Hoosiers have been on. They haven't won since September. That certainly is going to affect anybody's confidence. But now, Ed, my question to you is, does this team have what it takes? Have they shown any signs to you that they have what it takes to kind of gird up this week and play that spoiler role against a Purdue team that's looking to go to a bowl?
Well, I think if you look back to the Ohio State game, they played pretty well in that one. They've shown flashes of being able to play decent football against, Penn State. They were within 6 of the Nittany Lions. They should have beat Virginia, who's turned out to be a pretty solid football team. But we're talking, that was 6-7 weeks ago now.
Right.
Ohio State, obviously that one was a little bit more recent, but I think that's why the mindset is so important. If they believe they can win this game, then I think they can. And if they think that we're just playing to finish out this awful season, then that's what's going to happen. They're just going to play and finish out an awful season with another loss.
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see how last year's game impacts his team's mindset. They went to West Lafayette. They won in overtime. A drastically different team back then with Ben Chappell and Tandon Dawson, a lot of different weapons. But they did beat them last year. They do believe that, they at least have enjoyed some success against them. So maybe that'll make a difference. Kickoff of the Old Oaken Bucket game is 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time at Memorial Stadium this Saturday. But come Sunday, Indiana basketball has a big game against the Butler Bulldogs. And when we come back, we'll take a look at how the Hoosiers are doing.
up, buddy? Doing good? Come on, let me in!
Want to get inside Indiana? Call 800-282-GO-IU today to get the best in-depth coverage you'll find anywhere on the Indiana Hoosiers. You'll get 12 full-color glossy issues packed with the Hoosier news you crave, plus our exclusive online express edition featuring game previews, reviews, and much, much more, all for just $49.95. Inside Indiana. You can't get closer to IU athletics without a scholarship.
Somebody in there! Let me in! Please.
Welcome back into the Inside Indiana show. Ken Bikoff with Ed Magoni, and the Hoosiers on the hardwood are off to a 5-0 start. Ed, they've won each of those games by 20-plus points. First time in school history they've pulled that off. And they passed their test on the road against Evansville, a game that a lot of people thought was going to be a heck of a challenge for them, and yet they came through with flying colors.
Yeah, I was one of those people who thought it was going to be a test down there at Evansville, and Indiana handled it magnificently. I mean, they were able to stifle Colt Ryan in the first half, who's the Purple Aces' leading scorer. Victor Oladipo did a nice job on him in the first half, and that gave Indiana a chance to build a big lead and then just handle the Purple Aces in the second half pretty much, trade baskets with them and still win by over 20 points. So, it was an impressive performance. Every game they've played this season has been impressive in one fashion or another. And, the defense has really stepped up for Indiana this year. I mean, it's surprising how much better they're passing the ball and how much better they're defending their opponents. I mean, even in the last couple of years, they win 100-70, but they were giving up 70 points. And you're kind of thinking to yourself, well, when the competition gets a little bit better, they may not be able to score 100 points, and then they're going to be in trouble. But this year, they're holding the defense. The defense is holding teams in check, and the offense is still putting up nice point production, even balanced scoring, and they're distributing the ball beautifully. So it's impressive.
And they have had a couple of those games where they've given up 70+, but those were more about the offensive efficiency and the fact that they were scoring and scoring quickly because they're doing such a great job of moving the ball, not making a lot of mistakes, and so it creates more possessions for the opposition as well. And I think it's that moving the ball well. That's what has really impressed me. Against Evansville, I know Cody Zeller at one point got the ball in the low post. It was in the first half. He drove in through the lane and found that lane and got the ball out to the perimeter for, I think it was a Jordan Hulse 3, knocked that down. But a lot of people will look at Cody and say, well, he's the reason why the Hoosiers are playing as well as they are. To me, Cody's part of it, but it's also kind of just the maturation of that lineup in general.
Yeah, and you have to give a lot of credit to the sophomores. I mean, Victor Oladipo and Will Sheehy have been outstanding this season. I mean, they both suffer from the flu at different points in different games, but Victor has been just sensational. I mean, he last game against Gardner-Webb, he distributed the ball, he played good defense, he scored. I mean, he did everything you could possibly ask him. He was rebounding well, and he's been like that almost every game, scoring and just contributing and bringing energy to the floor. Well, he's great off the bench, gives you an instant spark, scored 10 straight points against Gardner-Webb. Jordan Hulse is distributing the ball nicely. Verdell Jones is doing a better job distributing the ball and keeping his turnovers down. Christian Watford's distributing the ball. I mean, the interior passing is at a level that we have not seen since Tom Crean arrived here, and it's impressive.
Admittedly, they have not been playing the toughest opponents. And, they'll tell you that they've played challenging teams. Stony Brook and Chattanooga are two teams that are expected to do very well in their own conferences. But again, when you look on the grand scheme of things, these aren't national power teams. How good can this team be based off of what we've seen in the first 5 games?
Well, they're doing the things that they didn't do last season that kept them losing games. They're doing those right now. I mean, they're defending. They're playing better defense against all comers. Doesn't matter if they're a big team inside or they shoot the ball well from the outside or they're quick. They're finding ways to adapt their defense to prevent them from doing what they want to do, the opponents from doing what they want to do. And that's the first step in winning a basketball game. And the ball movement, I don't care if you're playing Bloomington South or Kentucky. If you're moving the ball well, you're moving the ball well. Now, certain teams are going to put more pressure on the ball and deny them the ability to do that, but this is something we didn't see from them at all in the previous 3 seasons. I mean, guys would just take the ball at the top of the key and dribble for 10, 15 seconds and not move the ball at all. There's very little dribbling going on right now, and that's unless they're attacking the basket, and that's a real big improvement in my eyes.
Well, they passed their test on the road against Evansville, but their next test is going to be against another mid-major team, but admittedly not one that is like other mid-majors, and that's the Butler Bulldogs, who Indiana will take on Sunday at Assembly Hall. When we get back, we'll break down how IU might fare against Brad Stevens' squad.
It's a new year. There's a new buzz, and there's a new Inside Indiana magazine. For more than 20 years, Inside Indiana has been your best source for the kind of in-depth coverage of Hoosier athletics you crave, and now the best just got better. By calling 800-282-GO-IU, you can experience 12 packed issues dedicated to Indiana athletics in full-color glossy brilliance for only $49.95. But that's not all. You'll also receive access to our new Inside Indiana Express edition online, featuring game previews, news, photos, and much, much more. So what are you waiting for? To stay up to date on the Kevin Wilson era and all the excitement surrounding Tom Crean's Hoosiers, plus all the news you want on the rest of Hoosier athletics, call 800-282-GO-IU today. Inside Indiana. You can't get closer to IU athletics without a scholarship.
Welcome back into the Inside Indiana show. Now, Ed, the Hoosiers' next challenge is going to be the Butler Bulldogs, a team that's gone to the title game the past 2 years. But this is a team that's kind of in transition because some of the keys from those past 2 years are no longer with them. And it seems that Butler, who's struggled a little bit out of the gate, is still trying to find itself. Yeah,
they are. And they were like this last season after they lost Gordon Hayward. They stumbled out of the blocks, and then they once they got into their conference play, they found themselves, and then they were able to play well. And non-conference Butler is not the same as conference Butler and March Butler. And I imagine that we'll see a similar transition this season. But right now they are struggling a little bit. They lost to Louisville pretty handily. Louisville handled them. And they lost to Evansville at Evansville. Now, that was a game they probably should have won, but they let get away from them, and they end up losing that in Evansville's opener at their new arena down there. But, Butler still has some players. They have some guys with experience who've played in those 2 title games. I mean, they're a veteran squad, as usual. And they have leaders in the right places, and I think they'll come in and they're going to give Indiana their best shot.
I think this is going to be an interesting game because of the fact that, it's a dirty word at Indiana, but Calvin Sampson used to say that you can't expect to play February basketball in November. And I think that's especially the case with Butler in that, like you said, last year they had to find themselves, and they were so much stronger later in the year than they were in the early part of the season. That could be what they're dealing with right now, but Indiana also is trying to develop as well and feel itself, and it seems that maybe Indiana's chemistry is a little bit farther ahead than where Butler is right now.
Well, I think so. I mean, Indiana they returned most of their scoring from last season. These guys have played together for 2 years. Most of the players at least 2 years, if not 3. And I think there's something to be said for that continuity and that building that Tom Crean's been doing over the last 3 years. And I think we're starting to see some of that come to fruition, whereas Butler has been dealing with big losses like Gordon Hayward and Sheldon Mack and Matt Howard last season. I mean, those are big guys. Those are important pieces to lose from your puzzle. But, they have new guys like Kylie Marshall, who's stepping up for them nicely, and Andrew Smith on the interior played in the championship game last year alongside Matt Howard, and he's been performing well this season. And Ronald Norwood, their point guard, who doesn't score a lot, but he's a heck of a defender and a good distributor of the basketball, and he's back. And if you have a good floor general and a decent inside game, I think you can give anybody a run.
Okay, now I think a lot of people, IU fans, are going to be looking at that matchup. Tom Crean and Brad Stevens, Butler's head coach. There are more than a few Hoosier fans out there that would be perfectly fine with Brad Stevens taking over the Hoosier program at some point. And especially, I know the heat will get turned up a little bit if Crean loses this game, which, people will make it out to be Crean versus Stevens, even though that might not be the case. But there certainly is some people that are going to be saying, hey, look, this might be a guy that Indiana could turn to in the future if the Hoosiers don't pan out how is expected.
Yeah, I think Tom Crean understands that. We got some letters from readers last year that said that Tom Crean needs to go to Brad Stevens' coaching clinic. That's just ridiculous. I think Brad Stevens is a good coach. Obviously, he's very analytical, very X's and O oriented. He knows how to motivate his guys, and he's done a fantastic job at Butler. There's no denying that. But he had a foundation that he came in and stood on someone else's foundation. Tom Crean came in and has been building the foundation to stand on. And now he's starting to be able to stand on his own foundation, and we're seeing the rewards of that. But this is a pivotal game for Crean in his career, I think, at IU. Just not because if he loses, he's going to lose his job, or anyone's going to come in and throw Tom Crean out, but more so just so that he can get that monkey off his back. Butler has been the team in the state of Indiana, and Indiana is on its way to reclaiming its place as the state's top school in basketball, and I think this is an important game, tilting that to the Hoosiers' favor.
Yeah, and win or lose, like you said, it's not as if Indiana's going to turn its back on Tom Crean. That isn't the case. And he's a guy who was brought in here to do a job, and he's doing that job. He's doing exactly what they needed to do. They've progressed each year. They've gotten a little bit better. There's a great recruiting class coming in for 2012, so it's not as if Tom Crean is in any danger, regardless of what some fans might say. But I do think, like you said, this is kind of a statement game of we're Indiana, it's Indiana, and we're taking over the state again. And I think Indiana's players as well might be a little bit tired of hearing about their fellow basketball players to the north.
I'm sure. It's just like, in previous seasons you would think the Butler Bulldogs would come into Indiana or see Indiana as a chance to get revenge on the school who passed them up. Now it's Indiana who's playing the part of the spoiler almost, just because they haven't had success the last 3 years, and now they're tired of hearing about how great the Bulldogs are, whereas it used to be the Bulldogs were tired of hearing how great Indiana was and Bob Knight was. But Butler's had the better of the tilts in recent years. When they have faced each other, they've beaten Indiana twice, I believe, and it's certainly it's going to be an interesting game. I think there's going to be a lot of excitement at Assembly Hall, and I think Indiana's really going to be up for this one.
It's going to be an intriguing weekend, to say the least. And when we get back, Ed and I will give you our predictions on how the Hoosiers might do over the weekend.
What's up, worker? How's it going? What's up, buddy? You doing good? Come on, let me in!
Want to get inside Indiana? Call 800-282-GO-IU today to get the best in-depth coverage you'll find anywhere on the Indiana Hoosiers. You'll get 12 full-color glossy issues packed with the Hoosier news you crave, plus our exclusive online express edition featuring game previews, reviews, and much, much more, all for just $49.95. Inside Indiana. You can't get closer to IU athletics without a scholarship.
Somebody in there! Let me in! Please.
Welcome back into the Inside Indiana show. Ed, we only have a couple of minutes. Hoosiers take on the Boilermakers on the football field. They have Butler on the hardwood. How do you think each game kind of plays out?
Well, this is a Hoosier fan's dream come true this weekend. It's two big games, two big rivalries. Although Butler isn't usually a rivalry, it is now, I think, to a certain degree. And I think, I have a hard time seeing Indiana winning the bucket. I know on paper, I think that they have every right to win that game, but I think in their minds, I'm not sure that they believe that they can do it. And I think that's going to be the big hurdle to overcome. If they get out early to a lead, I think they can win. But I just have a feeling that Indiana's defense is going to falter and Purdue's offense is going to shine, and they're going to lose the bucket. And in the basketball game, I think it's going to be a lot closer than you think it's going to be, but I think Indiana will end up winning that one in another tight contest. Kind of like the bucket, they'll probably lose in a tight game, and then I think the basketball game, they're going to win in a tight game.
Well, the Boilermakers certainly come in playing with a lot to play for. Indiana can win this game. Again, it does come down to mindset, though. Where is this team mentally? How the defense is going to be able to avoid giving up big plays and just be able to stop that Purdue offense that has been rolling a little bit. And Indiana really needs to play its best football to pull off the win and hold on to the bucket. But I think ultimately Purdue is going to come out of the victor in that one. As for on the hardwood, I think Indiana and Butler, it's going to be close for a half. I think that Indiana is a motivated team. They're playing as well as I've seen them play in the Tom Crean era. Their depth is playing well. They work well together, and I think Indiana's going to pull away in the second half, and the Hoosiers are going to walk away with a victory against the Bulldogs in Assembly Hall. Certainly is going to be, like we said, a very interesting weekend of sports. Ed and I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and a happy holidays to you and your family. But for Ed Magoni, this is Ken Bikoff saying thanks for watching and pace yourself.